The rain came down in sheets that night, turning the Harrington Estates rose garden into a graveyard of petals and mud. Norah Blake pulled her coat tighter as she made her final rounds, her shoes sinking into the softened earth with each step. She should have been inside already, warm and dry, but something had pulled her toward the courtyard. Something she couldn't name. That's when she heard it. A sound so faint, so impossible, that her mind tried to dismiss it as whined through the hedges. But Norah had learned to trust her instincts in the 3 years she'd worked at the estate. She froze, rain streaming down her face, and listened. There it was again. A muffled cry. Small. Desperate. Coming from beneath the ground. No, she whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. No, no, no. Norah dropped to her knees in the mud, her hands clawing at the freshly turned soil near the new rose bed. The dirt was loose, recently disturbed. Her fingers scraped against something hard. Plastic. She dug faster, her breath coming in ragged gasps, until she saw it, a small hand, pale and trembling, reaching up through the earth. Hold on. Norah screamed into the storm. Hold on, baby, I've got you. She cleared the dirt from around the child's face, recognizing him immediately. Dan. 7-year-old Daniel Harrington, Julian's son. His lips were blue, his eyes half closed, but he was alive. Barely. Norah pulled him from the shallow grave with strength she didn't know she possessed, cradling his small body against her chest. He coughed, mud spilling from his mouth, and gasped for air. It's okay, you're safe now, Norah sobbed, rocking him. You're safe. Norah? What on earth is going on? The voice cut through the rain like ice. Norah looked up to see Seraphina Vale standing at the edge of the courtyard, perfectly composed despite the storm. Her white silk robe remained somehow pristine, her dark hair styled immaculately. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a fashion magazine, not like someone who'd rushed outside in a crisis. Dan, Norah choked out, holding the boy tighter. Someone buried Dan alive. Call an ambulance. Call the police. Seraphina's expression shifted through surprise, horror, and concern in the span of a heartbeat. She pressed a hand to her chest, her eyes widening. Oh my God. Is he breathing? Daniel, sweetheart, can you hear me? She moved forward, but Norah instinctively turned away, shielding Dan with her body. Something in Seraphina's eyes, a coldness beneath the performance, made Norah's skin crawl. What's happening out here? Julian Harrington's voice boomed across the courtyard. He appeared in the doorway of the manor, his tall frame backlit by the warm interior lights. Within seconds, he was running toward them, his face pale with fear. Dan? Dan. I found him buried, Norah said, her voice shaking. Under the roses. He was crying for help. Julian dropped to his knees beside them, his hands hovering over his son's face as if afraid to touch him. Dan's eyes flickered open, focusing on his father. Dad, he whispered, so quiet they could barely hear him over the rain. I'm here, son. I'm here. Julian looked at Norah, his eyes filled with a gratitude that would soon turn to suspicion. How did you know to look there? I heard him. I heard him crying. Seraphina moved closer, placing a delicate hand on Julian's shoulder. We should get him inside immediately. He needs medical attention. Norah, you must be in shock. Perhaps you should sit down before you explain what happened. There was something in the way she said it. As if Norah were the one who needed explaining. As if Norah were the problem. Julian scooped Dan into his arms, carrying him toward the house. Seraphina followed, already pulling out her phone. Norah remained kneeling in the mud, Dan's blood and dirt staining her hands, her mind racing. Who would bury a child alive? And why did Seraphina look so calm? Inside the manor, chaos erupted. Mrs. Chin, the head housekeeper, brought warm blankets. Marcus, the estate manager, called for the family doctor. Staff members gathered in hushed clusters, whispering and staring. Norah stood apart from them all, dripping rainwater onto the marble floor, watching as the doctor examined Dan in the sitting room. His vitals are stable, Dr. Morrison announced, his weathered face grave. But he's severely traumatized and has signs of oxygen deprivation. He needs to be taken to the hospital immediately for a full evaluation. I'll call for the helicopter, Julian said, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. Seraphina appeared at his side with a glass of whiskey. Here, darling. You need this. She turned to address the gathered staff, her voice carrying that perfect blend of authority and vulnerability that had made her so beloved among Julian's social circle. Everyone, please give the family some privacy. This has been a terrible shock for all of us. As the staff began to disperse, Seraphina's gaze found Norah. Norah, dear, perhaps you should go change. You look absolutely dreadful. We'll need you to give a statement to the police, of course, about what you saw. What I saw? Norah repeated slowly. Yes, about how you found Daniel. They'll want to know every detail. Seraphina's smile didn't reach her eyes. After all, you were the only one in the garden. You must have seen or heard something that might help them understand what happened. The implication hung in the air like poison. Julian looked up from where he sat beside Dan, his expression shifting from gratitude to something else. Something uncertain. Norah was making her evening rounds, Julian said carefully. She does that every night. Checks the grounds before locking up. Of course, Seraphina murmured. But isn't it strange? That she just happened to be in that exact spot? That she heard something through the rain that no one else heard? Daniel's window is closer to the garden than Norah's quarters. If he cried out, surely we would have heard him from inside the house. Norah felt the room closing in. I would never hurt Dan. I love these children. No one's suggesting anything of the sort, Seraphina said quickly, placing a hand over her heart. We're all just trying to understand. You've been under so much stress lately, haven't you? Mrs. Chin mentioned you've seemed tired. Distracted. Mrs. Chin shifted uncomfortably, but didn't contradict her. Norah felt her stomach drop. I'm not distracted. I heard him crying and I dug him out. That's what happened. Dan stirred on the couch, his small voice cutting through the tension. The lady said the roses needed planting. Everyone froze. Julian leaned closer. What lady, son? Who said that? But Dan's eyes had closed again, exhaustion pulling him back under. The helicopter arrived 20 minutes later. Norah watched from a window as Julian carried Dan across the lawn, Dr. Morrison following close behind. Seraphina stood in the doorway, waving them off with a concerned expression that melted the moment they were out of sight. She turned back toward the house, and her eyes met Norah's through the window. For just a second, her mask slipped. The look was pure calculation, pure threat. Then she smiled and disappeared back inside. Norah's hands trembled as she headed to her quarters. She needed to change, to think, to figure out what had just happened. But as she reached her door, she noticed something on the floor. A single white rose, its petals pristine despite the storm, with a note attached. Some secrets are better left buried. The police arrived within the hour. 2 officers, led by Detective Alvarez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with silver-streaked black hair. They set up in Julian's study, interviewing staff one by one. When Norah's turn came, she sat across from Detective Alvarez and recounted everything. The sound in the garden. Finding Dan. The loose soil. She left nothing out. Detective Alvarez listened without interruption, taking notes in a small leather notebook. When Norah finished, the detective leaned back in her chair. Miss Blake, how long have you worked for the Harrington family? 3 years. And your relationship with the children? I care for them. Not officially, they have a nanny for that, but I help out. Read them stories. Help with homework. They're good kids. And your relationship with Mr. Harrington? With Miss Vale. Norah chose her words carefully. Mr. Harrington is a fair employer. Miss Vale and we don't interact much. But you live on the property. Surely you see each other regularly. She arrived 6 months ago. Since then, she's made it clear that she prefers to keep staff at a distance. Detective Alvarez made a note. Has Daniel ever mentioned being afraid of anyone? Any unusual behavior from him recently? Norah thought back over the past few weeks. Dan had been quieter lately, more withdrawn. She'd attributed it to the changes in the household. Julian's engagement to Seraphina had shifted the family dynamic. The children were still adjusting. He's been quieter, Norah admitted. But nothing that seemed dangerous. Just adjusting. Adjusting to Miss Vale? Adjusting to having a new mother figure, yes. Detective Alvarez closed her notebook. Miss Blake, I'll be honest with you. This case is already complicated. A 7-year-old boy was buried alive on a secured estate. The only person who claims to have hurt him is you. Miss Vale has expressed some concerns about your recent behavior, stress, emotional attachment to the children, exhaustion. Norah's blood ran cold. She's lying. Is she? Because 3 other staff members confirmed that you've seemed off lately. I'm not off. I'm doing my job. I believe you, Detective Alvarez said quietly. But belief isn't evidence. Right now, you're not facing charges, but Miss Vale is building a narrative. If you know something, if you suspect something, you need to tell me now. Norah hesitated. Then she remembered the rose on her floor. The note. There was a white rose outside my door tonight, with a threatening note. Do you still have it? Yes. I'll need to see it. And Miss Blake? Be careful. Someone in this house is very dangerous. And they're trying to make you the scapegoat. After the police left, Norah couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Seraphina over the past 6 months. The woman was careful, calculated. She'd inserted herself into Julian's life with surgical precision after his wife's death 2 years ago. She was beautiful, cultured, spoke 4 languages, came from old money. Or so she claimed. At 3 in the morning, Norah gave up on sleep. She pulled out her laptop and started searching. Seraphina Vale. The results were surprisingly sparse. A few society photos from charity events. A mention in a business journal about Julian's engagement. But nothing about her background. No social media. No digital footprint before 18 months ago. That was strange. Everyone had a digital footprint. Norah tried variations. Seraphina Valesque. Nothing. Serena Vale. A dead end. Then, on a whim, she tried Celine Vargas. A news article from Argentina popped up. 3 years old. A wealthy family's child had gone missing under suspicious circumstances. The family's live-in companion, a woman named Celine Vargas, had vanished the same day. The photo was grainy, but the resemblance was unmistakable. Norah's hands shook as she kept searching. Solana Vieira brought up a similar story from Brazil. Another wealthy family. Another missing child. Another woman who'd disappeared. And then she found it. The missing person poster that made her blood run cold. Lena Vale. 8 years old. Last seen in Sao Paulo, Brazil, 4 years ago. Last person seen with her, a woman matching Seraphina's description, who'd been working as the family's nanny. The child's face stared out from the screen. Dark curls. Bright eyes. A gap-toothed smile. Underneath, still missing. Family seeking information. Norah saved every image, every article, every link. Then she created a hidden folder on her laptop and backed everything up to a cloud drive. As dawn broke, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Seraphina Vale, or whatever her real name was, had done this before. And Norah had to prove it before she did it again. The next morning, the estate was unnaturally quiet. Julian hadn't returned from the hospital. Most of the staff moved through their duties like ghosts, speaking in whispers. Seraphina held court in the morning room, accepting sympathetic calls and acting every inch the concerned stepmother-to-be. Norah avoided her, focusing on her duties. But as she was dusting the library, 5-year-old Meera appeared in the doorway. The little girl's dark curls were tangled, her princess nightgown wrinkled. She'd been crying. "Miss Norah." Her voice was so small. Norah knelt down immediately. "Sweetie, what's wrong?" Meera glanced over her shoulder, then moved closer. "Is Danny okay?" "Mommy Seraphina said he went on a trip, but I heard the helpers talking. They said he was hurt. Danny's with your dad at the hospital. The doctors are making sure he's all right." "Was he really buried?" "Like in the ground." Norah chose her words carefully. "He was in the garden, and he got stuck. But I found him, and now he's safe." Myra's lower lip trembled. "Mommy Seraphina says if we're quiet and good, the ghost won't come back." Every nerve in Norah's body went on alert. What ghost, honey? The ghost in the garden. She says it takes bad children who don't listen. Meera's eyes filled with tears. But Danny's not bad. He's the best brother. Norah pulled the little girl into a hug, her mind racing. There's no ghost, sweetheart. And Danny is wonderful. So are you. You don't need to be scared. Mommy Seraphina says. Meera. Seraphina's voice rang out from down the hallway. There you are, darling. Come along. We need to get you dressed for the day. Meera stiffened in Norah's arms. Then she pulled back, wiped her eyes, and walked towards Seraphina with the resignation of someone much older. Seraphina appeared in the doorway, immaculate in a cream cashmere dress. She looked at Norah with barely disguised contempt. I'd appreciate it if you didn't fill Meera's head with frightening stories about her brother. I didn't. I told her the truth. That Dan is safe. The truth, Seraphina repeated softly. Yes, the truth. We'll all need to be very careful about the truth, won't we, Norah? She took Meera's hand and led her away, but not before Meera looked back, her eyes pleading. That afternoon, Norah made a decision. She would search the East Wing storage room. Julian had mentioned once that Seraphina kept personal items there, things from her past that she claimed were too precious to display. The room was always locked, and Seraphina wore the only key on a chain around her neck. But Norah had been working at the estate for 3 years. She knew where the duplicate keys were kept. She waited until Seraphina left for a spa appointment. Then she retrieved the master key from Marcus's office, he was in town running errands, and made her way to the East Wing. Her hands shook as she unlocked the door. The room was dark, dusty, filled with boxes and old furniture covered in sheets. It smelled like lavender and secrets. Norah moved quickly, searching through boxes, lifting lids, checking drawers. Most contained exactly what they should: old books, linens, decorative items. But in the back, hidden behind a stack of luggage, she found a small antique desk. The drawer was locked, but the wood was old. Norah used a letter opener to pry it loose. Inside, her worst fears were confirmed. A child's bracelet engraved Lena V. A lock of dark hair tied with a pink ribbon. Drawings signed Lena in a child's unsteady hand. And a leather journal with SV embossed on the cover. Norah opened the journal with trembling hands. The entries were sporadic, written in multiple languages, but the content was chilling. Dates, names, locations, notes about families, their wealth, their vulnerabilities, the children's schedules, their fears, their routines. This wasn't a journal. It was a hunter's log. Norah photographed every page, her phone's camera clicking in the silent room. She was so focused that she didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. What do you think you're doing? Julian stood in the doorway, his face a mask of exhaustion and anger. Behind him, Seraphina appeared, her expression triumphant. She's been stalking me, Seraphina said, her voice breaking perfectly. Going through my things. Julian, I tried to tell you. She's obsessed. Unstable. This isn't what it looks like, Norah started, but even she could hear how weak it sounded. Julian stepped into the room, his eyes taking in the open drawer, the items spread on the desk, Norah's phone in her hand. You broke into a locked room. You went through Seraphina's personal belongings. Because she's not who she says she is. Norah held up the bracelet. This belonged to a missing girl from Brazil. Lena Vale. Seraphina has been using different names, moving between wealthy families, and children keep disappearing. That's insane, Seraphina breathed. Julian, she's having some kind of breakdown. That bracelet was my niece's. She passed away years ago. It's deeply personal, which is why I keep it private. Your niece? Then explain the journal. Explain the names, the families, the notes about. My grief journal, Seraphina interrupted smoothly. After losing Lena, I became obsessed with child safety. I documented cases, families who'd lost children. It was my way of processing. It's painful and private, which is why I never discuss it. Julian looked between them, and Norah could see him wavering. Seraphina was good. She was so good. Please, Norah said desperately. Just look at the evidence. Search her name. Celine Vargas in Argentina. Solana Vieira in Brazil. She's been doing this for years. I had a cousin named Celine, Seraphina said, tears sliding down her perfect cheeks. We were very close. After she died, I sometimes used her name when traveling. It made me feel connected to her. Is that a crime? Julian's expression hardened. Norah, I think you need to leave. Now. Julian, please. Security will escort you off the property. If you come back, I'll have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Norah looked at Seraphina, who smiled behind Julian's back. A cold, victorious smile. You won't get away with this, Norah said. I'll prove what you are. You're fired, Norah, Julian said quietly. Leave. Now. They escorted her to her quarters, watched as she packed a single bag, and walked her to the front gate. Norah left with nothing but her phone, her laptop, and a burning determination to expose the truth. But what Norah doesn't know yet is that Seraphina has already made her next move. And little Meera has just disappeared from her bedroom. Will Norah expose the truth before it's too late? Or will another child vanish forever? This story is far from over. Norah has the evidence, but Seraphina has something even more valuable, Julian's complete trust and access to his children. What happens next will shock you to your core. Part 2 is packed with shocking reveals. Like, comment part 2 and where you're watching from. Make sure you subscribe to continue the story. Your support keeps this amazing stories coming. Thanks for watching.